Hey, ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? Hope you're good, hope you're well. Good afternoon. We've got a good show for you today, but this is going to be a different one. No gameplay today, we're not going to be talking about any other projects. We're going to be talking about DeFi. We're pre-gaming, we're going to be talking about yield farming, staking, reward systems, everything so far that we found wrong with the Web3 economy. It's going to be interesting, let me know your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Hope you're good, hope you are well. Welcome to the show. My name's Steve Woody, I'm the Undisputed Noob. Today I am joined by two special guests. We have Mitch from Million on Mars, Yield Squad. You might know him if you've been watching any of our content. And we also have a new special guest today. We have Will Robinson from Axie DAO, also involved, sorry, not Axie DAO, I apologise. We were just talking about Axie before the stream. Alliance DAO, sorry, I apologise. And yeah, basically we're going to be talking today about a tweet. This really started a conversation that Will put out. And if you haven't seen it, we will link it in the description. You can follow at Danger Will Robin and also at Yield. Is it Yield Squad, Mitch, I believe?
Yep.
Yield Squad.
Yep,
so you can follow both of these gentlemen. But I want to have this conversation today. I think this is a really, really important conversation to have about Web3, about the gaming side of it, yield farming, around the sustainability of the ecosystem, and sort of before we jump into that and talk about this and go into this tweet thread, I just want to give you guys a chance to say hello, just welcome yourselves. So Will, welcome, thank you for joining us. Do you want to just let everyone know who you are, how you're in this space? Just give everyone a quick intro into who is Will.
Sure. So I joined DeFi Alliance, which is now called Alliance, a year ago. I was head of the accelerator and a head of community. My background, I was a forensic crypto auditor for 4 years, basically auditing things like the Ethereum Foundation's wallets, exchanges in Korea and Malta and Canada, and a lot of Cayman Island accounts. And before that, I did a PhD in video game design, taught game design for about 7 years.
Wow, so definitely knowledgeable, and I've been around in the... when did you first get into crypto and into DeFi? How long have you been in this space?
2017, early summer, was basically learning about the Bitcoin Cash fork and trying to understand how crypto economies work. The PhD was ending and wanted a career that wasn't making games.
Nice. So you decided to come into this space. Well, I'm glad you're here, and as I mentioned to you before the stream, thank you for your tweet. I've been wanting to articulate what you wrote for a long time. Even if I did, I wouldn't have been able to do it justice. You've articulated it better than I could, and I think it's an incredible conversation. I can see it's already got kind of 381 retweets at the moment. I'm going to post it into the chat if you want to have a look at this. If you want to kind of keep up to date with what we're talking about here, this is the thread that started this conversation. But before we do that, before we jump into that, Mitch, welcome, sir.
Hi there.
Love your hoodie. That's incredible, mate.
Thank you.
It looks good. Is that merch? Is that official Million on Mars merch? Oh,
no, it's very nice.
Oh, we got a Polygon Studios
Oh,
there.
nice Poly Studio shirt.
I was on a call with Polygon just before this, and I'm really, really excited for some of the things coming out of Matic this year and what these guys are starting to do. I'm still very bullish on this market. I think it's exciting. Before we jump into that, Mitch, for everyone that doesn't know you, please give us the pleasure. Who's Mitch?
Sure. So my name is Mitch. I've been in the video game industry for the better part of about 15 years now. Got my start in my career at companies like Zynga, working primarily in the free-to-play game space at the emergence of social games, right at the sort of the beginning and the kickoff of when there was virtually no rule book, very little sort of guidebook on or rules on how to do anything in that space. And it's very much caused me to have the same kind of deja vu that I have working in this space now in Web3, where there is, again, very little rule book, very unfettered space, a brand new open area of opportunity to be explored and sort of figured out in real time in many ways. And I'm bringing all my expertise and experience building Web 2 games for the last 10 to 15 years, building systems and economies, and bringing that over to a scarcity-based game design approach in Web 3.
Nice, nice. Thank you very much. And I have to say, you've done a great job so far from what I've seen. You've got one of the best stable coins I've seen in a Web3 economy. Well, until recently when it started pumping, but we'll talk about that another time. So yeah, welcome guys, welcome. Thank you very much. So let's just start this off then. I'm going to talk about the tweet. So Will, you posted last fall, Axie Infinity had incredible valuable NFTs, creating lucrative tokens. Then, as a number of Axies ballooned against their player growth, the entire economy model death spiraled. What kind of caused you to write this? Was this just a I'm having a rant, here we go, or was this planned? How did this tweet exist? What was your process, mate?
Sure. So I'm a mentor at Alliance DAO. Actually mentor the Steppen team and learned a lot from the Axie team and help with all kinds of problems that show up in tokenomics design. And what I was seeing was a proliferation of complexity in token design, trying to save economies from collapsing. But everyone was doing it sort of the wrong way. They were trying to add sinks arbitrarily, hoping that those would somehow outweigh the sources of tokens. And after, enough conversations, I was like, gosh, I just have to share this with the world, like what we've been sort of working on and building. And it all boils down to, if you're not creating value, then you can't capture the value, and then you can't redistribute the value. So if people are going to be playing to earn, if that's going to be sustainable, they need to be either creating value or someone else has to be creating value and redistributing it to them. And so sustainable economies, creating a new sort of lens on them, trying to think through that.
Okay, nice, interesting. For those of you that said my mic's a bit low, hopefully that's better. I just turned it up. Mitch, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think at its base level, it's something that's in line with my own philosophies as well. In the sense of, I think to me, at its foundation, this entire conversation should be less focused around this lens of earning and more around the lens of ownership. To me, this is when you move away from this idea that you're earning, that things are a job, that things are built in this kind of a structure, and you move around to the notions of ownership and agency. I think that's at its crux where the actual opportunity to actually put a economy into use actually can come to fruition. Basically, if everything that can be acquired by the majority, 80-90% of the people playing the game has virtually no use or utility within the existing game economy, it's not usable in any kind of way. It has no vertical progression. It has no ongoing use or sync for the sake of ongoing gameplay. It's really just something you acquire and then have a need to sell out. Then I think that's exactly what propagates these kind of inflationary issues that we see inside of these game economies.
Definitely.
And I think providing ownership is that piece that's missing.
I think that when we go back to last year, we look at kind of May last year, about a year ago, and just around the time when Axie kind of hit that spike and took off, they, in hindsight, obviously did not have a good economic model in place, and they're almost a victim of their own success. And I don't want to kind of, I don't want to put Axie down. I love the team. I love what they're doing. I still believe in Axie long term. I think that they didn't know what they were doing. I think that's what it comes down to. They didn't have the procedures in place to be able to deal with that growth. I don't think they could have seen or expected it. And I think that a lot of people afterwards looked at it as a model, a bit like sort of Ethereum looked at Bitcoin and built its gas contract that way because it thought it was the best way to go, until now they've realized they need Ethereum 2.0. I think we model successful people until we point where we say we could probably do things better or differently. So I think that a lot of games that are coming out now are starting to understand this. They're seeing these problems in the space, and they're working on that. But I think what we've seen before this point is some studios, game designers, chancers, whatever you want to call them, with nothing more than a PowerPoint presentation, who have just pitched an idea because they want a pump and dump. They're just interested in how much money can they extract from the economy as quickly as possible. And then I think there's another type of a group of game developers and designers that want to do something meaningful, but maybe don't know how, or don't understand. I mean, if governments can't build sustainable economies, what chance have game developers got? Right? I mean, it's a complex system of supply and demand and tokenomics and macro and micro. So I guess what I'd love to hear from both of you is just your thoughts and your opinions on how do you think we got to this stage now? Like, you've heard obviously what I've just said in terms of my thoughts and beliefs, but what are yours? How do you think we've gone from this Axie pump that happened in May? And again, I don't want to sort of belittle anyone or anything, but we saw Axie, and then we saw Peg Axie, and we've seen other games that have followed similar trends. What are your thoughts on kind of how we've got to this stage and where we are now? And Will, do you want to start on that and give us your thoughts?
So I think you're right to sort of signal the quality of the Axie team. It's really hard to duplicate success, not just because like you can copy paste the model, but these are killers. These people work hard as heck and are so much smarter than you would ever imagine, that I would never count Axie out of recovering from. And I do think you're right. Like, as trailblazers, they're going to find all the successes first and all the failures first, right? And that we owe them a debt of gratitude for that. I think also that it's not bad to have a growth model that works the way they built it, where one person can bring in two people and those people can bring in two people, do it in a sort of distributed way, where you do have a multi-level marketing approach, but where people can create value, because in becoming a coordinated group of people of a certain size, you can start producing value that you could never do before. Like, just look at Facebook, right? Facebook has this enormous network of people. And because it has that, those people are valuable, right? They create value just by being collected and connected to each other. Axie also has an entire blockchain to capture value with. And it has just all these amazing modes of doing revenue generation, such as like being the wallet for Web3 for the vast majority of its users. That what normal game developers fail to realize is that Web3 games can capture all kinds of financial value outside the normal gaming. Your game is your bank, right? Axie's building a Web3 bank super app, and the onboarding go-to-market strategy is a game, right? Like, to think of it the other way is to miss, like, I think, forest for the trees, you know? Well, so very excited about where it's going, and that when you're thinking about game economies, you can't think of them in Web3 as insular. They have to be part of a wider sort of scope, because those players are fair game for advertising targets. They're fair game for wallet fees, transaction fees, AMM fees, lending. He could be the #1 creditor in the world one day. Like, that's insane. We would never expect that of like Blizzard with their games. And so in building this giant network, and spending a lot of money to do it, right? Because you have to give back so much to the players. It created success, but then they didn't have a way to rein it in a smooth way. Right? You would kind of want the growth to be expected or understood and to make everyone whole. And because it was the first time anyone was building this and moving so fast, you know, there was some collateral damage. The price is still up from where it was a year ago. And, you know, I think you don't want to be too doom and gloom, because there's not just incredible people in the team, but incredible investors, right? Like, you look at the people who've put their money behind Axie, Paradigm and A16Z, like, everybody wants them on their cap table. So yeah, that's my sort of position on the situation right now.
Nice, it's good. What about yourself, Mitch? From obviously looking, and I know you've created articles and you've created content around this. You've talked about this. I know you have thoughts and feelings on this, but how has this kind of influenced you, given that you're now building an economy in the Web3 space? How has that impacted you, and what lessons do you think you've learned from what Axie did, and how that did kind of open up the doors to this space, so to speak?
Yeah, I certainly have a lot of respect and appreciation for the sort of the games, the teams, and the projects that have been around this space and have established a lot of the existing paradigms and precedents that have been built in this space. Yeah, I've even had Axie scholars myself. I've been in this space, not since like the very beginning of 2018 or 16 or anything like that, but I've really kind of done my best to understand the mindset and the expectations and the needs from the players, from the managers, from the developer angle as well, so that I can really have a full picture of where those needs and those opportunities lie. In terms of where I think things have gone and where I think things have happened, I think what we've largely seen, and this has been something that this isn't an original discussion, any original point by any means, but I think what we've largely seen is crypto native teams that have been building games that largely are made by teams that don't have traditional game development experience. And I think now we're starting to see a little bit more of a hybridization of maybe some crypto native teams that are bringing in traditional game developers onto their teams, or we're now even seeing traditional Web 2 development teams now move into the Web 3 space. I think personally the biggest piece that's missing, I think, is that actual experience in building something that can be run as an actual games business. I think if your goal is to operate a game in Web 3, I think there's still a big aspect of a games business that has to be taken into consideration so that you can build something for the long term. I think a lot of projects have designed things to be built in a model that's built around flash design or flash sales, in which they're basically selling one time to raise a lot of money, and they're trying to give themselves enough runway and roadmap to go for a long time. But my concern with that approach is that you're basically creating these speculative bubbles around assets in which people start immediately ascribing value and expectation upon these things before they've been realized, before they've actually been delivered, before the actual utility and gameplay has been realized. And I think that these speculative bubbles that are being created in some of these ecosystems are largely what is causing so much volatility and uncertainty in this space, because it's these speculative bubbles are I think that's where so much of these sort of challenges are occurring from, because they're built on a very unsound foundation of promises and hope and expectation, when in my own personal take, it should be built around an actual fundamental experience that people are there for the real reasons, not just financial. So my entire thesis is built is around the idea that you need to build a fun and enjoyable game experience first, or everything else doesn't matter. That, like, in the long term, you aren't going to build something that people stick around and care about and will reinvest in. That when their only sole motivation is profit oriented, that you will always be designing and working against people that are trying to extract maximum value out of your product. When you create something that is fun and engaging and has actual value that people care about because they've invested their time and their energy, they stop caring about the motivation of profit. They stop caring about the motivations of personal gain, and they care more about actually just having an enjoyable experience that is fulfilling. And I think that's the secret that's missing.
This is going, and actually you covered this as well in your tweet thread, Will. But one of the things that I really was interested in and actually didn't consider was when you said founders pitch you their games quite often, and you said more often than not when they arrive they'll have this ornate diagrams of token flows and these complex model structures, and they've made it so complicated that they actually can't even reason with it themselves. They've almost like bamboozled themselves in. And it goes back to like the old internet marketing adage, right? Where I can charge you more money if I make things so complicated that you don't understand them. It's what lawyers have done for years with legal speak. It's what internet marketers have done, and we're starting to see it now. And your comments were that games have got an added sort of layer to this because they've got an entire imaginary world that they can call upon, and they can create all of this magic around whether it's staking rewards, whether it's in-game tokens, whatever artificial illusion they're going to use to pump up their economy short term. And I think, Mitch, what you're saying there is when people actually stop focusing on that and start focusing on having fun and the gameplay, then we're going to have better experiences. So, Will,
we see it as band-aids.
Yeah.
Like, basically, games can, as they see the collapse coming, start creating all kinds of band-aid solutions. And a classic one used in DeFi and games as well is staking, right? Because staking basically says, hey, don't sell your stuff now. Sell 3 times as much in a month from now, or a year from now. And that's great. That buys you 1 month. And if in 1 month you can somehow turn the economic system around, start being positive like revenue flow, then do it. But if you can't, you're just kind of borrowing, it's like you got a debt that you're going to have to pay,
Yep.
a very expensive debt. And so this is what I mean when I say, like, we've got these Rube Goldbergian economic systems. They're finding all these things like staking to basically create pockets of friction where people have a hard time reasoning, should my money be here? Shouldn't it be here? Is the token worth a lot? Is it worth nothing? I don't know anymore. Other people are doing it. I'll just keep going. Or I'm too lazy to think about it. I won't even bother selling. I'll just sit on it. And so by creating friction, they slow down the collapse. But that doesn't stop it, right? You need an actual system. And what you were saying before, players want fun. And fun comes in different ways. People want to kill, people want to explore, people want to collect, people want to socialize. And as long as there are people who want those things and the game can give it to them, there's value to capture, right? You can charge those players money because it's providing them a service, right? And the other players in the game, if they can heighten those experiences, help you explore in a way that's more valuable to you, help you kill in a way that's more interesting to you, help you socialize in a way that you enjoy more, well, then they can get paid. So there's this like really cool guild coming to the accelerator next week called Legion Farm. And it's a pro player guild with this crazy AI UI over the game that it's like a Cyrano de Bergerac that says like, hey, you're going to help tutor this player who's paid to like play this game with you, like let's say Call of Duty. And I'm going to tell you how to be a better coach, how to make their experience more fun. So like, I notice you're not talking 20% of the time. You should talk a little more. Here's a script of some things you could say or some prompts to get conversation going. I notice on screen that you're more than 100 meters away from your player. You should get closer. People enjoy an experience where you're like being a pro mentor in proximity. And so the idea of players bolstering the experience and being like, guides that you can pay for. That's value additive. Everybody wants that, right? Or pro Dota players who play professionally get paid, and they get paid because I pay a $15 ticket every year to see the international.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That's sustainable.
You've got, like as you said, you've got Game Leap, you've got these websites where you've got these pro coaches. I mean, a very, very small amount of players in Dota or any competitive scene actually are profitable, right? But there's millions of people that strive for that want that. And I think that's one of the things that we've seen as a challenge is that there's a few people that are making money in Web3, yet everyone's seen it. And now everyone thinks they can make money in Web3, but the reality is that for someone to make money, someone else has to lose money. There has to be a value exchange, right? It can't be 2 people make money and then nobody loses, because how is that ever going to be sustainable in the long term? Like you said,
right. The only way you solve it is if there's a third party bringing in money for like eyeballs, like advertisers, or wallet acquisition through fees. There are other ways, but they're harder to think of as game designers.
Well,
I think there's a fundamental one that's missing, though, is that it's not that for someone to win, someone else has to lose money. To me, it's that the person who spends money needs to just feel satisfied spending the money.
Right.
It's not about losing your money. It's about spending it and feeling satisfied that your money has engaged or given you an entertainment value
Right.
that is fulfilling and worthwhile. And that money goes into an ecosystem that can be used to pay for the actual business operations, can be used to redistribute a percentage back into the existing ecosystem, can be used to pay for operating costs or for treasury fee. Like there's, that money can be distributed when it comes in. But to me, if it provides an entertainment value in which there is not an expectation of earning and the outcome, then you're already halfway there.
Well,
And
this
I
is
think
this
that's the
is it.
part
And it
that
could be
people are
positive,
missing.
son. Like if I'm getting $50 of fun and I'm only paying $10 for it, we've just created money.
Yep.
Right? We've created value because I got more than I gave. And sure, it's cash for fun, but like, who cares?
Well, that comes down to
But
perceived value, right? I mean,
that's
anything.
okay though. I think that's the point, is that it should be okay to spend money. Like the best analogy I love to use for this, because I think it's something that everyone can kind of step back and just think about in a very practical context, is Magic the Gathering. Now, if you look at the card game, the physical card game as an abstraction, I think it fits the same models as this space in a lot of ways, with one small exception, in that there's no way to just earn Magic cards when you play the game, like at your local when you're just playing with your friends. Well, if you go to a local tournament and stuff like that, sure. But if you're playing with your friends, you can't just earn by being part of the Magic playing community, right? There's no passive rewards that you can earn. So I'll throw that out for a second. But at its base level, if you're buying packs of Magic the Gathering, you get a base level entertainment value provided, because those assets can be used to play a card game with your friends. You can own them. But to me, the thing that works really well in this comparison to play and own or NFTs is that when you're done with Magic the Gathering as a hobby, you can go to the local card shop and sell back your collection and regain a percentage of the money that you've invested into the game. That might be a small fraction of what your investment was if you just drew a bunch of really crappy packs, or you weren't good at trading or managing your card collection and maybe figuring out what the best metas were that you could, build a deck that's worthwhile at the end of the sort of playing season, whatever the things are. But to me, that idea in which a hobby is still financialized, it's still built around monetized, uncertain, gambled boxes and things like that in the way you're opening card packs. But people have no issue with this model in which there's an endless supply of packs being minted by Wizards of the Coast, in which you're effectively like opening for rarity you have no real clue on the certainty of, but everyone has no issues assigning value and rarity and scarcity and all these things to the cards in this ecosystem. And they've built up all these other aspects of a community, of advertising, of professional play, all these little meta layers that have been built around the ecosystem, to me are a perfect proxy for the way I can see a sustainable model being built in the future for card games and other game economies. To me, like that same kind of model can be built in a lot of different ways, as long as there's a core base entertainment value that is being produced at the heart of it. And that's that, when I said at the beginning, if you build a fun game at the beginning where people put money in and they're having fun and they stop caring about profit, then it becomes a completely different approach to what you're building.
But Magic cards, right, cycle out cards.
True.
Right? They have type 2 and type 1. I don't know if they're still called modern. I don't know.
Yep.
But you have to make these objects lose value over time. So they're permanent and you own them, but their utility has to diminish. And this is what I think Axie is getting around to, with the idea of upgrading Axies and paying people only for elite play. What you do is you introduce power creep, and you make it so that older Axies that aren't being reinvested in become irrelevant in generating revenue. And that's good, right? That's how you cycle out inventory to force the purchasing of new inventory. And the advantage Axie has over Magic cards is it gets secondary sales, right? When I sell my Magic cards to the store or to another player, Wizards doesn't get that margin. And that's so powerful that Axie gets that. But it still needs to deprecate cards or deprecate Axies.
So I'm just interested in this from a slightly different perspective now, because I think you've got two angles here. We've got the game developers that are building out these products, these ecosystems, these communities, and then we've got the community themselves. And from what you're saying and what I'm hearing, one of the things that seems to be missing, and I think this is because we didn't have the information to be able to. Any education comes from knowledge, through experience, right? So we need to have the experience, to have the knowledge, the foresight, the hindsight, all of that good stuff. We haven't had that before, so we've not been able to create the education for people. And there's no such thing as an expert in crypto. It's too new, right? We're all still kind of, in some degree, we're all still kind of figuring this space out. We're very new, and so NFTs have blown up. People are trying to get their heads around PFPs and what is a Bored Ape and why is this valuable and why is this not valuable and why is this game good and like you said, this goes back to before. People were trying to put some value onto what they believe are their assets. People that are struggling in the real world, whether it's through third world economies or just people that are in an economy where they're not really able or sometimes even willing to generate wealth in the traditional world, that sense, are turning to NFTs, are turning to crypto. They're turning to this new class of asset in a way of wealth generation. So they have this earning mindset, and that was created through play to earn, which is how we started. But I've been driving this narrative, and I kind of know you guys are the same here, that I think that earn is a very dangerous word to put into that play to earn space. And I think this is where we need to shift this narrative to play and own, because the ownership, like NFTs and digital ledger technology, is all about ownership of your assets, right? And being publicly accountable on a blockchain, so that we can see votes, we can see the history of how your charity has spent your money. We can, like, this is the goal, the dream is that we can get rid of some of the distrust within governments, within corporations, within the world, and we can have sovereignty, we can have ownership of our assets, so that if our country gets bombed and we need to quickly leave, we can put our assets onto the web, we can move, we can relocate, and we don't have to worry about moving a business or a physical location or a house. Like, we have this new world of energy, which is effectively what crypto and Bitcoin and everything is. It's energy. So my question now to you is from a community perspective, because I know there's work that needs to be done on the game developers and the studios and the influencers. There's work that needs to be done there. But talking to the community directly, how can they better educate themselves to have realistic expectations in this space?
Yeah, I think you have to have a good mental model of what the life spiral was to understand the death spiral. So imagine a world in which there's only one Axie, and somebody would like another one. And so they put a price, like, I'd like an Axie for $1. The person with that one Axie, they're the only person capable of generating SLP that can generate another Axie, right? So that person says, okay, I can work with my Axie to generate one more for $1. But then somebody hears, you can use Axies to make $1. I want $1. I'd like an Axie too. But now demand for Axies is doubled. Let's say it's $2 now for an Axie. You're still there chugging away trying to get your one Axie, but somebody hears $2 for an Axie. That's twice as good as $1. The lineup grows. 3 people want, 5 people want. And the more people who want that $1, the more that $1 becomes worth more. The more people queue up to get it, the more demand increases until you reach some crazy breaking point, right? And then the Axies get distributed, right? And people start making their dollars. There's some release on the pressure, but as the number of people playing grows, the amount of awareness grows. And so we have even more people who want to generate revenue with these things. And it's not just Axie, it's anybody, right? And we didn't know this going into it, right? We didn't know that we were creating a life spiral mechanism, right? Where demand increases value, which increases demand. That was unexpected. And so as soon as the opposite happens, it unravels just as fast. And it's what StepIt is doing right now, but every other NFT to earn project has realized it can do, whether they know it or not. And so what players need to think is, okay, there is an unrealistic value that can collapse at any time as quickly as it grew. And I need to be very careful with how I'm allocating my funds here. Because crypto is not a way to create generational wealth randomly, right? This isn't your ticket out of poverty. This is a casino that people are building. And if you think that you understand the casino, then you are the casino's best customer, right? The person who thinks they
True.
can count cards is the person the casino wants most in the casino, right? Because they're probably too bad at doing it and will just bleed that much more money. So, caveat emptor, buyer beware.
Mm. And I think this is heightened by what we do see online with influencers and people. I mean, we've seen this incredible growth. We've never seen anything like it in the history of the world. A brand new monetary system created to overtake what we believe to be a declining fiat-based currency system. And so I see the excitement, I see the idea, but then I also see the people that bought the top. I see the people that bought Bitcoin at 60k that are holding it. I see the people that bought Axie at half an ETH. I was one of them. I see the people that buy into these games and then the value drops, and then that quickly turns into a very toxic mentality, because no longer is it just about investing in a game for fun. People are now investing more than they should. They're emotionally connected, and now they feel trapped and they need some release. So Mitch, what do you think from a game, like how do you prepare for what is inevitable toxicity when a market does decide to correct itself?
It comes down to the fundamental foundation of, when the market is down, are people still playing? When there's no financial incentive, would people still play? And if the answer is no, then you're going to have a lot of questions to answer, and a lot of excuses to make. I think literally, that's why you need to build something with a strong foundation that people enjoy without the need of earning money, because I just think that otherwise you're going to struggle to actually retain people for the long term. I think that's at its most basic level.
Yeah, and I think people often shit on Axie who don't play it, who assume it's a garbage game. But actually, it's not that bad a game at all. I've played a lot of games, and I think it has some strategic depth, and it's great also for your average gamer, right? You can see a kind of value there, but at the same time, because there's finances included, you will always get people who are not playing the game for the game, who are playing for the money. And if they don't understand where the money's coming from, because they've never encountered something like this, they're going to make conceptual errors. What I compare it to is the sexual revolution. So it used to be that to have sex with somebody, you'd have to go through a broker. This priest would say, yes, you and you can now have sex with each other from here on out. I just have to make sure that you're not the same sex, and then you can go on with your business. And then in the 60s, in the Western context anyway, we rediscover peer-to-peer fucking, right? You can now not go through some broker centralized entity. We can decentralizedly sex each other. But there was no educational component there. Society was not priming people for peer-to-peer sex. And so lots of sexually transmitted disease, lots of unwanted pregnancy, lots of sexual assault. And it's taken 70 years to try and solve this damage. And there's still people who are preaching, let's just ban sex instead of educate people in high school. And it's the same with crypto. People are going to say, let's ban crypto instead of just giving people basic financial education to understand power they now have. Because now that a 14-year-old can leverage long cat pictures while drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning, we have a new threat model to society, and we have to teach for it. And I just think that that's the problem that Axie and every other Web3 game is facing, is just an uneducated financial mass of people.
I think that's a really interesting take on it. And also I love it. I know that the community would just be like, sex, what? Huh? They've just woken everyone up in the back of the room there. So I think this is fascinating because we are so early. We're 10 years into crypto, just past. And in DeFi, a few at best, right? Not even one when you consider the advancement of how we're going. So what do you look for, Will, when you're looking at these game companies that are coming through and you're looking at these communities? What is it for you that stands out? What do you look forward to, and what can people do to really make a difference and impact your thought process in looking at people moving forward?
We need a lot of resilience, right? The Axie team is a perfect example of this. They've gone through hell and high water and are still building like there's no tomorrow, right? So that's the number one thing we look for is resilience and formidableness in founders when we're investing in projects, because we know they're not going to look like what we invested in 4 years from now. And that's when we're going to unlock our vesting. So we need to make sure that they're in for a lot of pivots and that they have a history of showing that. I'm also, though, very interested in on-chain games. So games that have no centralized dependencies, things like Dark Forest, Lattice. These are very interesting projects. So when it comes to a theme, I'm curious to see what that looks like long term. It's very hard to imagine and scale, and so there's a lot of research that needs to be done. And that's a very infrastructure gigabrain kind of play, as opposed to let's get smart people who've made games before and who are resilient and so they can make awesome crypto games and figure it out.
I'm interested in that concept because I'm involved in a project that went fully decentralized. They uploaded their entire contract to the smart chain. They had no centralized element, and unexpectedly and not intentionally, they DDoSed Matic and took it down for a week back in January. So I don't personally think there is a scaling solution out there that can handle a well-built game right now, or a game economy. I think that the layer 2s and the layer 1s out there, I mean, look, you only have to look at the minting process of the Bored Ape the other day, and you can see there's still so many problems here and so many challenges. And you could go down the Axie road, you could make your own chain, or you could do what like Million on Mars is doing, and you could say, well, we're not going to be on one chain, we're going to be chain agnostic, we're going to have multiple chains. And so I think obviously there's a lot of growth that needs to happen in this space, but is this where you see the future? Do you see it as fully decentralized, completely on-chain? Or do you feel like we're just still not ready for that yet? Do you think that people, the general public, still can't be trusted and we need that centralized element to guide them during these early unsettled times?
Yeah, the people who are playing Dark Forest are the super nerds, right? There are people who are engineers who can code and read smart contracts, and that are in it for the tech, right? And so that's not a general mass appeal, but as an investor, we usually follow the Paul Graham philosophy of find out what the nerds are doing on weekends, because in 10 years, everyone will be doing that on weeknights. So that's where my mind is and what I'm excited about right now.
Okay. And how about you, Mitch? I know you are very, very deep inside the economy that you're building at the moment. I've seen firsthand how people love what you're doing. I mean, they throw money at it when they don't need to, and they do it because they want to. Do you feel, or do you worry that people are throwing money into your game because there's an ROI in there, or do you think they're doing that because of the fun and the enjoyment and the progression?
Both.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there has to be value. There has to be. I think there's a mixture of both elements that are present. But I'm not measuring myself on how profitable all the assets or the buildings in our game are, or how much dusk earning potential people have inside of our game. I'm more focused on the economic stability of the actual ecosystem in the game itself, for the greater for the health of everybody that's playing the game. And I'm more focused on ensuring there's enough entertainment value and economic depth being stood up inside of our game, so that there's a reason for people to come back every day, that there's always something new, there's always a new mountain to climb, that there's enough horizontal and vertical progression being built into the game in various layers that create something actually deep and sustainable, that actually has value, that people care about because they've invested their time and a degree of financial input as well. And I think that's the foundation that builds the value in everything that we're making, is that people actually care about what they're playing. They care about their investment of time, and that investment actually matters to them, because they have ownership and agency on it.
This is one of the things that really drew me to you when we first spoke, is when I invested in the project, the first thing I said to you is, how are you going to deal with the economy? And you said at the time, if you think you have enough sinks, you need more. And Will, I just want to bring this up because I know in your tweet you said, Well, you were talking about what does that mean for sources and sinks in a game when the total lifetime value is being threatened, and so when we look at sinks, you've said that that's not a sustainable model due to the fact that it's just a temporary band-aid. And then Mitch,
Yeah, the title of this tweet, like when I was writing it out, was called "Forget Sinks and Sources."
Forget sinks and sources.
Because if you keep adding sinks, right? Like, look, I can sell blue shoes, I can sell pink shoes, I can sell green shoes. Like, obviously, the sink itself isn't what matters, right? It's find places where you create value and tie a token cost to them, right? And so you add a sink, right, tied to your social. You add a sink tied to your exploration. You add a sink tied to your PvP and killing. And in finding the places where your game creates value and tying a sink to it, you then create something sustainable. And a lot of people are making arbitrary sinks, just hoping some of them stick.
Mm.
I'm not accusing you of doing this, by the way.
Yeah, no. Mitch mentioned this point, and he's doing exactly that. He creates a sink, and then he adds the value, creates a sink, and adds the value. And exactly what you're saying is exactly what he's doing. This is why I wanted you to be here together to share your opinions. You know, you obviously have an incredible insight into the economic side of what games and guilds and people are doing and looking for, and what you're looking for. Mitch, you've got a wealth of experience in the free. I mean, you know,
he's actually building it. He knows way more than me.
Exactly, but not in that. Build it in free to play with. I mean, you know, people that Mitch is working with at the moment. You're talking about building Farmville, building Mafia Wars, and that actually brings me on to a quick point here. Is that it's okay to say like you need all these data points. Obviously, data is incredible, and you need that data to be able to make good decisions. But at what point do you become overwhelmed with data, where you're paralyzed by information and not able to move forward? Because it becomes too much, and having no like centralized dashboard at the moment or anything that you can say, look, this gives us a picture of everything. You know, you've got stuff on one chain, stuff on another chain. You've got your centralized element. How do you move forward, and how do you deal with that from a game developer's point of view? Because I know games out there that are creating a game, but are just not even given a thought to that side of things. And I'm hoping that if they're watching this, it kind of just spurs them to go, do you know what? Maybe we need to go and consider this, or look at this, or talk or reach out to you guys and start hiring experts and consultants and looking at this modeling and the simulations and what could happen and how we can prevent these problems that have happened from happening again. We don't want another pump and dump. We don't want the community to just cancel culture one product because its tokens dumped and then go and do the exact same thing in another project. Like, the biggest fear I get from game developers is this toxic community scares the crap out of them. They really want the numbers and the exposure and the hype, but they want the sustainability, and they want it in a controlled way, because when you open that fire hose, you can't turn it off. And we've seen that with Sunflower Land. It's been insane growth. And now it's about educating the community to understand that they're not going to have a $10 token when the token launches. That's not going to happen again. It was a mistake. And learning those lessons, you realize that you can't do that. That's not sustainable. And I guess what that kind of brings me to with talking about this is bots. How do you both see the aspect of having a game that players can enjoy, that they can play, compared to the people who decide, there's some profit to be made here. I'm going to create some automation and some bots, and then I'm going to exploit that. What are your thoughts and your feelings around that side of things for the game economy?
I've talked to the Skyweaver team about this. It's very interesting. So Skyweaver is a card game. You can play it for money, and the bots showed up pretty quickly. And so then they made it harder for the bots by introducing a CAPTCHA, but then the bots paid for premium AI to beat CAPTCHAs. So they got past it. And then the bots were blocked because they made it harder to get the points. Only the better players could get them. But then bots developed techniques to play the game better. Then they stopped the bots from making money because they would realize who were because the bots would never emote. Like, they would never show any kind of humanity. And so then the bots started emoting. And so now the bots passed the Turing test. We basically incentivized fake humans that no other humans can detect are bots. And what they found is actually that's kind of useful because there's player liquidity. In any hour of the day, there's a bot who will play you and you'll think they're a person. But what is the value of that player liquidity? Like the team didn't go out and make the AI to play the game. That's really convenient, right? Like you outsourced building the AI. But at a certain point, you'd be like, stop. We've paid enough for this AI. We can't give out tokens like this anymore. And so then you need to use humanity protocols, right? Like start connecting your Twitter, your LinkedIn, your socials, your Facebook. And if there's a privacy concern, well, actually, we're accelerating a cool team right now called Clique that does zero knowledge proofs that you're human by pulling your socials, putting them on chain without revealing who you are as a person. Just like you have this many Twitter followers and you've had an active Facebook Twitter account for this many years, and you're not duplicating that information to any other account. So yeah, there are ways to kind of solve it. We're hoping.
Nice. Yeah, we've seen a lot of that with Discord. We've been using Discord verification in one of our games. The only problem is there's a hard cap of 800,000 users. So when you scale to 1 million daily active users, you need a new platform, right? Hopefully Elon will fix that with Twitter. Maybe that's one of the things we can look forward to. Mitch, what are your thoughts on this? Because you're obviously you're in the trenches, so to speak. You're there fighting this every day. What are your thoughts on this?
It's an invisible war that most developers and games have no clue what they're about to get into. And it's an issue that will become massively more challenging than it currently is at a scale in which most are not prepared to defend, or let alone in parallel to the actual promises and development schedules that they need to deliver on. Meaning that like it's like the famous Mike Tyson quote, everyone's prepared for a fight until you get punched in the face. And like literally, like I think everyone's about to get punched in the face this year for what's about to happen in a few different areas. And I think bots are a big one. And I think the demand for human verification, for humanity protocols, the value of humanity is going to go up in a big way when you can provably demonstrate that you're a real person behind a wallet and not anything else. And I think that we will see a demonstrable value that exists for people that can prove they exist as a person in Web3 above someone who's an anonymized account. I think just the value of humanity should be worth more than a bot, and there needs to be a clear distinguishment in that line, and that's something that we'll see hopefully this year.
And the trick is privacy, right? Like, because you know, that's one of the things crypto promises is a kind of anonymity.
Yeah, but people will give that up instantly for the sake of money. So like that'll be the first thing to go.
Or
like that'll be one,
right?
We'll see KYC humanity-based things with like facial scanning, social proofs, like maybe even spend $1 to prove that you're a person to the full extent. Like people will then sell and commoditize that for other people in bot farms. People will like sell their Web3 virtual identity effectively for a near-term profit, and we'll see fake account harvesting. We'll see all kinds like this. The war will never end. The war will never end, right?
Because your employer will get to see your full chain data, right? They'll know every game you've played for how many hours and how much money you've spent where and why, right? And it's going to be awkward. People are going to have to recover a kind of sense of privacy at some point.
Yeah, social media did the same thing.
Starting to regret
people
investing in
got your
now.
Facebook profiles revealed, and people lose their jobs because they're tweeting all on the weekends about things like this is every history repeats itself, I think, in that way. But what I think anywhere you don't see a demonstrated effort and a considerable like care and caution against like defeating bots and really identifying human players that are playing in their games are going to be things that are like basically you have to just assume they're going to be pumping their numbers without any kind of care for like accuracy. So basically, like anyone who won't admit how many bots they're openly banning is denying how many bots are actively playing.
Well, and this is another value capture opportunity for games. Games are basically iterative capture, right? Games are part of the process of proving humanity, and games can sell that data, right, in a way where it's respectful but also value additive to everybody, right? Nobody thinks that games are iterative captures, but that's what they are.
And this is why I've always been bullish on privacy coins, privacy tokens, privacy protocols. Like you said, proof of humanity, very bullish on humanity. But then it's going to be an evolving fight, right? It's like viruses and antiviruses. You need the virus for the antivirus to exist. So we need to figure this problem out before we encounter the next one. This is a really good conversation, guys. I'd love to. I'm aware that we're coming up to the hour mark, and I don't want to keep you. But I would love to maybe jump back on in a few weeks and continue this, maybe next month, if you both be up for it. I think we've definitely unlocked some conversation starters, if nothing else. And I'm wondering, just before we end, there's so much I want to talk about, but before we end, is there anything that you want to add, Will, in terms of any final thoughts? Like, if you were to talk to both the game developers and the community about people that are either coming into this space that are new or that are established and maybe somewhat complacent, what are your final thoughts on this topic of Web3 and where you think people should be focusing their attention?
I'd say that it's impossible to do your own research. You have to build it to understand what the problems are. And if you think you've got an edge without being a builder, you don't. You're going to get wrecked. That's what I want to protect people from. So go build. And if you like what you're building, apply to alliance.xyz. We'd love to see if there's an acceleration opportunity.
I'm definitely going to promote that out as well. I'm going to give your links out. Guys, I'm going to put the Twitter handles into the chat just so that you can follow both of these guys. I highly recommend it. And also you'll be able to find from their profiles their links. Again, you've got Alliance. Is it alliance.xyz?
Mm-hmm.
Alliance.xyz. And over to you, to Mitch. What about yourself? If I was to ask you the question of any final thoughts, any feedback for the community and for people in this space, where do you think they should be focusing their attention right now?
I think it's on education. I guess I'll go counter to what Will said, which is that I think you should continue to do more research and understand and educate yourself. I think that the most important thing I want to see people do is learn how to ask better questions and to not just accept at a baseline what they're being told. I think that if someone is presenting you something that they're saying is going to be a AAA game, that's going to stand the test of time or is going to revolutionize some space, I would ask them at the most basic level, what experience do you have making games that you have to prove that you have any capability of delivering on this promise of building a AAA experience? And like how much, and if someone is promising a game economy that is leveraging tokens and assets, ask them how much experience they have understanding that kind of thing in any kind of way, what kind of economic design experience their team has. Because I think that anyone that's promising that they're going to provide any kind of revolutionary change, any kind of substantive change in a space, but doesn't have any proven track record or expertise is going to be a much greater risk than a team of people that have actually built or done things previously. Like the actual professional expertise or even communal expertise within this space should be measured heavily against your risk portfolio, or against your risk profile rather, meaning that like you shouldn't take gambles on teams that have no experience making games when they're promising making games, and you shouldn't ape in everything on that. Educate yourself and learn how to like ask questions about how a team can actually deliver on what they're promising.
Risk management and diversify your portfolio if you're in this space, definitely. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. I wish we could carry on. I'm sorry we've run out of time. I want to definitely dive into this more if we can. Guys, reach out on Twitter. Make sure you follow them both, and let's carry on this conversation. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm really, really looking forward to us both doing this again.
Thanks, Steve.
Likewise.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers, guys.